Good morning, everyone. Pastor Randy here with the Morning Word, Northport, Alabama. It's December the 7th, 2020. I'd like for everyone to get your coffee cup up. We're going to give a shout out, a toast to all of our school teachers, our first responders, and our military personnel around the world doing their great job for us. To all of our visitors here from different states and from different countries, the Philippines and some other places that'll be watching. Thank you all so much. We are grateful for you tuning in. We've had someone from India, someone from Pakistan, South Africa, Norway, all of these different places. God has just been so good. And the reason that's happening is because you faithful watchers have been sharing, and people that have been shared with are sharing with others. And that's how this video, not all of these people are clicking on live, but they're coming to it later and watching it recorded. And I am so grateful, and I'm so humbled that God has chosen to do this during this time. So to God be the glory. Now, if you have your Bible this morning, we're in Matthew chapter 2, and the morning word is providence. Providence. That means that God's sovereign plan being fulfilled. That's all it really means. God's sovereign plan being fulfilled, that nothing happens by chance in life. So let's go to Matthew chapter 2, and we're going to read about 20 verses here, 22 verses, so y'all be patient with me. Now, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him. When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. So they said to him, In Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not the least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. Then Herod, when he had secretly called the wise men, determined from them what time the star appeared. And he sent to Bethlehem and said, Go and search carefully for the young child, and when you have found him, bring back word to me that I may come and worship him also. When they heard the king, they departed, and behold, the star which they had seen in the east went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceedingly great joy. And when they had come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented gifts to him, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Then, being divinely warned in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed for their own country another way. Now when they departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise, take the young child and his mother, flee to Egypt, and stay there until I bring you word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. When he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night, and departed for Egypt, and was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the Lord through the prophet, saying, Out of Egypt I called my son. Then Herod, when he saw that he had been deceived by the wise men, was exceedingly angry, and he sent forth and put to death all the male children who were in Bethlehem and all its districts, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had determined from the wise men. Then was fulfilled what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet, saying, A voice was heard in Ramah, lamentation, weeping, and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted, because they are no more. Now I'm going to summarize the next few verses. They got an angel came and told them to flee into Egypt. They go into Egypt. They come back into Israel, only to find out that after Herod had died, his son Archelaus had risen to power. And so the angel tells them not to go back to Bethlehem, but to go to Nazareth. And the last verse there, verse 23 says, And he came and dwelt in a city called Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the prophets, He shall be called a Nazarene. Now, here's the whole deal in a nutshell, and then we'll break it down a little bit. We need to understand that no matter what's going on in the world or what's going on in our world, God is always in control. God is always in control. And by that, we mean that he is not causing things to happen in the sense that he's bringing about evil or destruction or death. But everything that's happening and every decision of man that he will make has already been factored into the decision making of God. And that nothing is catching God by surprise, and all of it is being used by God to fulfill his divine plan. That's what we mean by providence. Now, I want you to just look at a couple of verses here. It says that these wise men came, came to Herod seeking a child. This born king of the Jews. He said, well, I hadn't heard of any king. He asked his guys, hey, there's a king supposed to be born? Yes, king's supposed to be born. Where's he supposed to be born? Bethlehem. Well, who said that? Micah said that. So they quote Micah. And Micah is a prophet who was living, now get this, 700 years before the birth of Jesus. The prophet Micah, being inspired by the Holy Spirit, told the entire world and the nation of Israel in particular, that the Son of God, the Messiah, the King of the Jews, would be born in Bethlehem. God said the boy's going to be born in Bethlehem, and it was 700 years before his birth. And you know where he was born? Somebody say it. Bethlehem. Why? Because God keeps his word, and God is faithful. God is in control. Now, how did he get Mary and Joseph from Nazareth? That's where they were from. Well, you know what he did? He put it into the heart and to the mind of Caesar Augustus that he should tax the world. Well, you know what that meant? It meant that Mary and Joseph had to return to the ancestral home of Joseph. You know where the ancestral home of Joseph was, being of the line of David? That's right, Bethlehem. So you know what happens here? Now think about this, guys. Mary has been told by an angel just some months prior that she's highly favored of God, and she's been chosen to bear the Christ child. And she said, be it unto me according to thy word, and from henceforth people will call me blessed. So she's blessed. She's highly favored. Now, she's pregnant out of wedlock. People are going to think she's a loosey-goosey. And when she says, I'm pregnant with a child of God, they think she's a nutcase. Now, just days, they live Nazareth, 70 miles north of Bethlehem. So that's about a 5 or 6 day journey on a donkey. So within a week of her due date, she's got to get on the back of a donkey and walk behind her husband all the way to this town, to which you and I would be thinking, okay, if I'm highly favored, if I'm going to have the child of God, if he's going to be a king, you know, and if God can make me pregnant without, while I'm still a virgin, then why can't God just let me have my baby here? Why do we have to go to Bethlehem? I'm due. Do y'all know what women are like when they're within a week of their due date? I don't even have to go into that. They are irritable. All of those words, all of those letters being separated by a period. Irritable. Yeah, that's right. And she's got to walk and ride a donkey. No air cushion ride to Bethlehem. When they get there, she would think, hey, listen, well, we did what God said. This must be God's plan. It's time to have my baby. Well, there's no room. You would think that if God is in control, he could make a room for me. We're going to have that baby in a donkey's cave. We're going to have it and lay the baby in a manger. There's nothing from Kohl's or Belk going to be put together here for a baby bed. You know, no zip and tuck, nothing like that, baby. He's going to be born. You're going to have to find the best thing that you can find to wrap him up with. Now, you would think that if God is in control, that these things wouldn't happen. But they all play a part of God's plan. None of those things, no room in the inn, that's not happenstance. Got to go to Bethlehem, that's not happenstance. Now, it's not fun. The favor of God's not fun all the time. It's not. And if we were God, we wouldn't do it this way, but we're not God. God's got a sovereign plan. And so guess what? Here, now he's got these wise men way over in this other part of the world, and they see a star. So you know what they do? Based on prophecy that they've heard, they follow the star. So here's a Roman Caesar who's given an edict that all the world must be taxed. That's moving Mary and Joseph from Nazareth to Bethlehem. Now you got a star that's bringing these wise men from the east to the west. And where do they meet? In Jerusalem. And then from there, the star leads them down to Bethlehem so that they come in and worship the king. They carry the news back to their land. In the meantime, Herod has heard that a child is born, and Herod is mad, and so he decides that he's going to kill the child before he becomes a threat to his throne. So you know what Herod does? When the wise men left, Herod was so mad, he doesn't know where the child is. He knows he's in a town of Bethlehem, but he doesn't know which child he is. So here's what he says. Based on the birth of the child and for what we glean from the wise men, we're going to go and kill every child in Bethlehem under the age of 2 years of age. That's what we're going to do. We're going to kill them all. Now, you said, well, if God was in control, why would God allow that to happen? Well, not only did God allow that to happen, God foretold it happening in verse 19. In the prophecy of Jeremiah, God saw that the children would be killed. And God saw, now listen, that didn't mean that God caused it. God's all he's saying is that God's in control, that what Herod did that day did not catch God by surprise. So you know what God did? You would say, okay, if I'm Mary and Joseph, so how do we get out of this tight? Well, here's what God said. Instead of God striking Herod dead right there, here's what God said. Here's what God, the sovereign God, told Mary and Joseph. Get out of town. Herod's going to come kill all the babies. They had to run. They had to go to Egypt. Now, you know why they went to Egypt? Because God had had a prophecy years before that out of Egypt he would call his son. So they're going back to Bethlehem. You just naturally, if you have to go somewhere, run from trouble, when you go back, you're going to go back to where you came from. So they're headed back to Bethlehem. Well, they find out that Herod's wicked brother is now on the throne. God took care of Herod. Okay, we won't talk about that, but God took care of Herod. So they go back and they say, hey, that's not good. So an angel tells them, Mary, Joseph, go back to Nazareth where you came from. Okay, we finally get to go back home a couple of years later, and after an exile trip to Egypt, we finally get back home. God must love us. And the reason they're going back home is because God had already foretold in another prophecy hundreds of years before the birth of Jesus that he would be called a Nazarene from the city of Nazareth. So all of this kind of chaos and all of this kind of uncertainty is swirling around the life of Mary and Joseph. Yet they've been called by God and anointed by God and favored by God and blessed by God. Now, guys, you have been called by God, anointed by God, blessed by God, and favored by God. Every one of us have. And yet we still have the same kind of chaos going on around us in our world. Maybe right now you're thinking like Mary thought when she was thinking when Joseph walked in and says, pack your shaving kit and make sure you got something to shave your legs with and get on the back of that donkey. We got 5 days to get to Bethlehem. And she goes, I'm pregnant, boy. And I'm due. He said, get on the donkey. We got to go. And you're wondering, just like her, what's going on here? Why doesn't God? I thought I was favored. I thought I was blessed. You are. You absolutely are. But here's what's happening. God had to get Mary and Joseph to Bethlehem because God had that was part of God's plan. And you and I need to understand that sometimes when things are going on around us that make no sense, extremely inconvenient or extremely uncomfortable, that God may be just trying to get us to our Bethlehem, to the place where he's going to bless us. You know, it was in Bethlehem that the child was born. Finally, the baby comes forth and she gets to hold in her arm the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords and the Creator, the one who's holding her breath, she's holding in her arms. God may be trying to get you to Bethlehem. And you go, what? Well, okay, we're in Bethlehem. Why don't we settle down? Why is this happening to me now? Well, God might be moving you to Egypt. Why? Because there's trouble coming in Bethlehem and you can't stay here. You can't stay here. Could I stop it? Oh, yeah, I could stop it. But there's a lot of other things going on in the world that you don't understand right now, Mary. So what we're going to do is we're going to run and we're going to go to a place that's where you are a foreigner. And you go, oh my God. So finally you get to Egypt in your life and you're thinking, okay, I'm safe from trouble. God is taking care of me. And he says, okay, it's time to move again. We're going back to Bethlehem. Oh, changed my mind. We're going back to Nazareth. And you're going, Lord, What are you doing in my life? Let me tell you what God's doing in your life. He's working out a plan that he has had in store for you and for me from the beginning of the world. From the beginning of the world. And when it looks like that our world is out of control, when we're having to get on donkeys pregnant and run from murderous kings and find ourselves in foreign lands where we don't even speak the language, when we find ourselves in a place where they don't have room for us, and it looks like that we're scraping the bottom of the barrel poor as dirt, and it doesn't make sense because God has called me highly favored. What's going on in my world? God's in control, baby. God's in control. Democrats are not in control. Putin is not in control. China is not in control. Now that's good news. God's in control. Is he going to stop every wicked thing that they're going to do? No. Is he going to remove all the pain and heartache and sorrow from the world? Yes, but not right now. God is moving. Now listen, he's not only moving me, but he's moving the entire world. He's moving everybody on this planet from Nazareth to Bethlehem to Egypt to Bethlehem and back to Nazareth. He's putting it in the hearts of kings to make edicts. He's showing stars in the sky for wise men to follow. God is orchestrating everything that's happening. Your world is not out of control, and nothing that you woke up to face this morning or nothing that you thought about last night before you went to bed has gone beyond God's reach and has gone beyond God's attention. God has already factored it in. And you are still blessed and highly favored. God's just moving us to the places of our blessings, to the places of our protection, to the places of our recovery, to the places of our refuge, to the places of our rest, to the places where he's going to use us to move in other people's lives. Listen, Mary was blessed and highly favored. And there came a day when she witnessed that her firstborn son was being put to death by murderous people on a cross. And I can't imagine what was going through her heart besides that of just a mother watching her son being murdered, but to be thinking in her mind, this is the Son of God. Why doesn't God stop this? He's sovereign. Mary, you won't understand this right now. But if that boy doesn't die, you won't live. The whole world dies. So this blessed and highly favored woman watches while the world strips her son naked, beats him to within an inch of his life, and hangs him between heaven and earth on a cross, symbolic of a criminal, but he wasn't a criminal. But at that moment, God laid on him the sins of the world. The sins of Mary, excuse me, the sins of Joseph, the sins of Randy Fuller, Jackie Duncan, Jeff Kelly. God laid on him the sins of the world. It didn't make sense, but God had a plan. 3 days from now, Mary, 3 days from now, you're going to see your son again, and he'll never die. And he's going to prepare a place for you that where he is, there you will also be. If it were not so, he would have told you. He doesn't always tell us what's happening at the time it's happening. He just tells us to trust him. Trust him. If it's a star, follow it. If it's an angel, listen. If it's the word of God, believe it. He's moving. He's a God of all power and all wisdom and all knowledge. And God is absolutely sovereignly in control and ordaining all the good things and redeeming all the bad things for our good and his glory. You can rest in that this morning. I hope you've gotten something from this message this morning. I hope it blesses you to know that while you think that your world or our world is spinning out of control and somebody needs to stop it, you just know this. It never has been, it is not, and it never will be out of God's control. It's his providence, it's his plan, it's his purpose. And nothing, no one, no thing, no angel, no power, no demon, no other little g God can stop him. He's sovereign. Trust him this morning in the middle of your mess, in the middle of your chaos. Trust him. Everything's working out just like God wanted it to. Just hold on. There's a resurrection coming. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Good Lord willing, and the saints don't rise. Here you go, Rhett. Peace out.